This is 24 degrees midheaven of Mercury sign, Mercury in the ninth house, Moon Regulus. We can honor Regulus. The reason why I'm not saying invoke is because there is a separating square between the Moon and Uranus, and an inconjunct between Regulus and Neptune now, and Saturn. So for those of you who are working with the outer planets, pay attention to them also in the elections. I've learned it the hard way when I did a Regulus talisman with Venus Regulus, and I'm working with the bisextiles, so that means I do call on the outer planets. And that is, that has been, I wouldn't do it again. And so this is Moon Hour Sol Day, Sun in Cancer in the 8th, Jupiter in the 8th house, ruling over the ascendant, but the Moon is in the 10th. And as for the topic of discussion, so first of all, let's call on Mercury is separating from the opposition to Pluto, which is a great time to also mention. I talked about the nervous system hacking, and so on, and mentioning the attempts to make someone have challenges with communication or forget things, and the harsh implication that has on the collective nervous system. Because what people forgot, they will remember. And this is also when it pertains to lost and leaked information, lost items, leaked information. Mercury is trining Neptune and Saturn, okay, as we speak. And we can call on Al-Qaeda. So one thing we can pay attention to at this time, with Pluto going retrograde, anything that was going in a certain way when Pluto was direct now receives a rethinking. And Pluto is great with recycling, with composting, with all of these things that have to do with going to the core of something and what was trash to make something grow there. Okay, this is what compost does. Okay, you compost something, and on the supposed ruins of that, you make something grow. And for many people with Aquarius, that is communities, ideas, ideals, the collective nervous system, but it is also in a bisextile with Neptune, Saturn, and Uranus. So Neptune, Saturn is also karma to the psychiatry, organized crime, drugs, but also diviners and channelers. One famous diviner and channeler is Mr. Pfizer. Himself was an astrologer, and he did an information ban on astrology at the time of COVID, which he had to pay back as retribution, not retribution, but as downright shilumim to class lawsuits that were made in Germany at that time against Pfizer to people who were harmed from the vaccine. All the social media that cooperated with him lost their crown, because then people went to other types of social medias. And so this is also the time to talk about Sedna in this mix. Uranus is about to ingress into Gemini and is already beginning to conjunct Sedna. And I want to think about Sedna's story, and Uranus rules suicide. So this is about basically suicide as a Sedna story. And I want to honor again Lilach, whom I only found out a couple of months after she jumped from a hospital building, coerced torture that she went using drugs in mental hospital in Soroka, and she jumped into her death. The building she jumped into her death from was bombed. People were evacuated. And no people were hurt in that bombing, unlike the bombing on the building on the city, with people inside the safety house were not evacuated and they died inside the safety house in a new building at the other side of the city. And her story basically, I did not know about it. So only when I was sitting and talking with the neighbors and so on, and we're talking about the housing and the difficulty. And one lady wanted to turn to receive assistance in the housing, and I said, be very careful. You have children, so they won't be traded and so on. And then one lady tells me this story of Lilach. And so before that, I felt I did not know anything. I felt that I felt there was a bombing and it had liberating energy. I did not know that it was in the hospital, and I did not know that nobody was hurt. So I was also feeling kind of weird about myself, feeling good about that bombing, only to find out that the people, not only were the people evacuated, so nobody was hurt, no person was hurt on that particular bombing. It was the same building Lilach jumped from, and that was a lady that suffered. She jumped into her death. She committed suicide, but basically she was murdered by society and by the supposed mental care that was supposed to revive her and return her to life, took the life away from her. And so this is a story that I hear upon the almost ingress of Uranus into Gemini and the already conjunction of Uranus and Sedna. And we can think about suicide as the Sedna stories of society. And Sedna's story was such that in her case it was about being married, but basically the trajectory of a child, a growing child, and growing into a young woman or young man into society, she was not getting along in what society was meaning for her. Okay, she didn't find a suitable husband, and some considered she's too spoiled, she's too this, she's too that. She tried to look for a place where she can be free, both within and outside the relationship. It wasn't like she wasn't open to relationship. In her case, it was relationship, but Sedna's story goes way beyond that. And because of a trafficking culture, and trafficking, occultistic, something that looks like satanic ritual abuse today, to be very honest, when you listen to the multiple versions of Sedna's story by BIPOC people, okay, then the ladies, the BIPOC ladies usually address that this was a trafficking story. Her father trafficked her, and he wanted some powers or some whatnot, and it sounds like satanic ritual abuse that we hear of today. And then eventually her father didn't save her. Later he was sorry all his life because he lost his daughter, but she became the goddess of the underworld, which in astrology is seen as kind of like Ba'aden Pluto, okay, beyond Pluto. And she received psychic powers, and the entire village, the entire tribe had to appease Sedna. And so I think about that bombing, which was probably not accidental, as the honoring and appeasing Sedna of the case of Lilach, who committed suicide, which basically means she was murdered by the medical society, but also the non-medical society that believed the authority of the doctors over the sovereignty of the patient. And also the ritual abuse society, okay, the society in which ritual abuse takes place, and people cannot even begin to recall or to talk about it, and it seems unreal and so on. And so Uranus ingress to meet Sedna is going to give us a lot of such stories, but also a lot of the appeasing of Sedna. You think about the entire building going down, and then people move to another hospital, but the parking for the next hospital, for the Yasota hospital, is incredibly high, is mythically high to pay the parking, in which to visit a patient, people now have to pay a fee that is beyond extraordinary. And if they battle against the fee of the parking, but not against what happened within the hospital, I don't predict that they will not still have to appease Sedna. And so Uranus going through that transit is an important time to honor these Sedna stories of societies, that the people that couldn't get along in the current conditions of society and needed society to change for it to be able to be including them. Okay? And so it is going to pertain a lot to what happens in hospitals, what happens in jails, what happens to people that are in poverty or homeless, to the facets of reality that are both the visible and the invisible. And it is in cahoots, it is in agreements with Pluto, Saturn, and Neptune. Again, calling on Al-Qaeda at this time, because Al-Qaeda governs the destruction of cities. And you noticed in that case of this lady that no person was physically hurt, but when people needed to go to visit people at the other hospital, they had to pay a fee. They had to pay more for the parking, and then they were began to unionize around the parking, but nobody began to unionize around what happened to Lilach. Some people just don't know, but there's also a limit to how much we cannot know and keep questioning the people that time and again say that causes them to be more suicidal, that causes them to want to end their life even more, and keep blaming them, bashing them, shaming them for their choices, just like people shamed Sedna for not wanting a partner in a human trafficking society where she was trafficked by her father. So what we are expected to see, unfortunately, the ingress is incredibly explosive. Many things, including Lilith, is going to be on the 11th degree of Scorpio. Sexual sovereignty, people committing suicide over the topic of sexual sovereignty. And again, the word committing a suicide in itself is kind of like the term psychosis. Okay, it is dumb, it is wrong, and it is not the correct way to address that. For some people, it's their last access to choice and their last access to life. Because in a society where to be is not to be, then that is a way to end suffering, and that's the only reason to still use the word, yes, to use the word suicide. But then when people try to commit suicide, everybody call them psychotic and so on and so forth, or they're not thinking in their right mind. Well, they are thinking in their right mind, and it's not psychosis. It's basically ritual abuse and the harm of society that causes them to feel the truth and see the truth, that in that case, this is the choice that they were left with. If they want to get the closest to be, then it's not to be. We're going to have a booming of that. It's going to happen in cities. It's going to happen in regarding local society. It's going to spark a civil war. Okay, I'm not saying there's going to be an immediate civil war, but those cases, if you think about the Arab Spring, I don't remember the astrology of the Arab Spring, but you think about the cases where a person died, committed suicide, and then there was a havoc around that. Now, of course, that was socially engineered, but cases like that are not always socially engineered. Okay, and with Neptune, we might not hear about those things immediately, but they are going to go viral until we do. And this is the issue that struck me the most when I looked at the Uranus ingress. I think Mars is going to be 11 degree Virgo, and the Mercury 11 degree Leo. So we're talking about something that's not too far from now. And this is kind of like the last warning shot before the actual crisis that's going to spark a civil war. And again, we're gonna have to deal with the fact that the way people have been looking at suicide bombings, even terror, which is usually kind of an assassination under guise. So I can expect that there will be terror activity because Saturn Neptune is death. Neptune is mystery, but also something viral. Uranus is something like a bombing. And Pluto has a taboo issue to that, kind of like a hidden intelligence. So you think about the mass shootings that were actually at operations to assassinate someone, but kind of like if you shoot everybody, then people think it's just a crazy student. Nobody asked what was that pink fluoride water that crazy student took or didn't take in gate, but people are going to begin to ask the questions. And I definitely see the Uranus Sedna as an invitation to think about the Uranus itself, or the suicide related to Uranus, as a Sedna story, rather than oh, they didn't appreciate life. They didn't know they appreciate life more than the people alive, and they saw that in this society to be is not to be, and they try to change society, or they try to change themselves, and if society was not willing to accommodate for life, then the death of one person is usually the warning shot before something more intense happens. And unfortunately, that death of Lilach, that even I did not know about before the bombing of the hospital, was honored or appeased, or the building was destroyed together with other buildings where people did live and people died even in the safety room, which is something that they obviously are not to blame for. And at the same time, it's those things that happened within closed circuits, whether in jails, in hospitals, in isolation, and even in apartments. What's the cure? You could see it as a joke, as what's the cure to domestic violence? Maui. And so it's a very dark joke, but so is what is happening, okay, to people.